I watched my daughter Sarah laugh with her new husband Mike at their first neighborhood barbecue. Then HOA President Karen appeared, her face twisted with hate. "You people don't belong here," she snarled, raising her gun. She didn't know she was about to shoot an FBI agent's son-in-law. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The summer evening started like any other in Oakwood Hills, our quiet suburban neighborhood where manicured lawns stretched endlessly and white picket fences marked the boundaries of the American dream. My daughter Sarah had just moved into her new home with her husband Mike 3 months ago, and tonight was their first neighborhood barbecue. I watched from my kitchen window as Sarah arranged flowers on their patio table, her face glowing with the happiness of a newlywed. Mike was grilling burgers, laughing with the neighbors who had already gathered. After 25 years as an FBI agent, I had learned to appreciate these peaceful moments. They were rare. "Dad, you coming over?" Sarah called from across the yard. Our houses were right next to each other. I had specifically bought this place to be close to my only daughter after her mother passed away 5 years ago. "Just grabbing the potato salad," I called back, watching her smile light up the evening. She was wearing the yellow sundress I had bought her for her birthday, and Mike had his arm around her waist as they welcomed their guests. That's when I saw Karen Whitmore approaching. Karen was the HOA president, a woman in her 50s who treated the neighborhood covenants like sacred scripture. She had shoulder-length blonde hair that was always perfectly styled, and she wore her authority like armor. In the 3 months since Sarah and Mike had moved in, Karen had already sent them 4 violation notices: grass too long, mailbox the wrong shade of black, garden gnome considered tacky decor. But tonight something was different. Karen's usual fake smile was gone, replaced by a cold determination that made my agent instincts kick in. She was walking faster than usual, her hands clenched at her sides. I set down the potato salad and moved closer to the window. "Mike Rodriguez." Karen's voice cut through the evening air like a blade. "I need to speak with you. Now." Mike looked up from the grill, confused. "Hey Karen. What's wrong? Want a burger?" "Don't play dumb with me," Karen snapped. "I know what you did." Sarah stepped forward, her brows furrowed. "Karen, what are you talking about? Can't this wait until tomorrow?" "No, it cannot wait." Karen's voice was trembling with rage. "Your husband thinks he can get away with anything because he's new here. Well, I have news for him." I felt my pulse quicken. In my years as an agent, I had learned to recognize the signs of someone on the edge. Karen was displaying all of them: the rapid breathing, the shaking hands, the wild look in her eyes. "Karen, I really don't know what you're talking about," Mike said, setting down his spatula. "If there's another HOA issue, we can discuss it tomorrow. Right now, we're trying to enjoy our evening with friends." "Friends?" Karen laughed bitterly. "You think these people are your friends? You think anyone here wants you?" The other neighbors were starting to back away, sensing the tension. I grabbed my phone and started recording, my federal training kicking in automatically. "That's enough, Karen," Sarah said firmly. "You need to leave. Now." "I'm not going anywhere until this person admits what he did to my roses." "Your roses?" Mike looked genuinely confused. "I don't know anything about your roses." "Liar." Karen screamed. "You poisoned them. My prize-winning roses that I've been growing for 10 years. They're all dead because of you." I was already moving toward the door, my hand instinctively reaching for the weapon I kept secured in my home safe. Something about Karen's demeanor was setting off every alarm bell in my head. "Karen, I swear to you, I have no idea what happened to your roses," Mike said, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "But whatever it was, I had nothing to do with it." "You're lying," Karen hissed. "I saw you. I saw you spraying something near the fence line 2 weeks ago." "I was spraying for aphids on our tomato plants," Mike explained patiently. "The spray doesn't drift more than a few feet and it's organic. It couldn't have hurt your roses." "Lies." Karen's voice cracked. "Everything you people say is lies." The racial slur hit the air like a physical blow. Mike's face went pale and Sarah gasped. "Get out," Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet. "Get out of our yard right now. I'm not going anywhere until he admits what he did and pays for my roses. Those roses were worth thousands of dollars. Even if Mike had accidentally harmed your roses, which he didn't, you can't just storm over here and start making accusations and slurs," Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger. I was at the door now, my hand on the handle. Every instinct I had was screaming danger. "You people think you can just move into our neighborhood and change everything?" Karen continued, her voice getting louder. "Well, I have news for you. This is America. This is a good neighborhood. And we don't want your kind here." Our kind? Mike's voice was controlled, but I could see the anger building. What kind is that, Karen? You know exactly what I mean. No, I don't. Why don't you spell it out for us? Karen's face was red now, twisted with hate. Mexicans. Gang members. Drug dealers. People who don't belong. I'm a teacher, Mike said quietly. I teach second grade. Sarah is a nurse. We're not gang members or drug dealers. We're just people trying to live our lives. That's what they all say, Karen spat. But I know the truth. I know what you people are really like. I was outside now, walking quickly toward the gathering crowd. But I was too far away and Karen was escalating too fast. Karen, you need to leave, Sarah said firmly. You're being racist and horrible and you're ruining our party. I'm not going anywhere until... Until what? Mike stepped forward, his patience finally snapping. Until you get to play out your little racist fantasy? Until you get to terrorize my wife? I'm done with this. He turned to walk away, dismissing Karen entirely. It was the wrong thing to do. Don't you dare turn your back on me. Karen shrieked. That's when I saw it. The glint of metal in her hand. Gun. I shouted, but it was too late. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the peaceful suburban evening like thunder. Mike stumbled forward, his hand clutching his chest, blood immediately beginning to seep through his white polo shirt. Mike. Sarah's scream tore through the air as she rushed to her husband's side. I was running now, my phone already dialing 911 as I watched my daughter's world collapse in real time. Mike fell to his knees, then forward onto the grass. Sarah dropped beside him, her yellow sundress immediately stained with his blood as she pressed her hands against the wound. Call 911, she screamed to the shocked neighbors. Somebody call 911. Karen stood frozen, the gun still in her hand, her face a mask of shock and confusion as if she couldn't believe what she had just done. Drop the weapon. I shouted, my FBI training taking over as I approached. Drop it now. Karen looked at me with wild eyes. He was going to hurt me. He was walking away and I couldn't let him disrespect me like that. Drop the gun, Karen. Now. She looked down at the weapon in her hand as if seeing it for the first time. I didn't mean to. I just wanted him to listen. Mike, stay with me, Sarah was sobbing, her hands covered in blood. Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare. I could see Mike's lips moving, trying to say something to his wife, but no sound was coming out. His eyes were unfocused, his breathing shallow. Drop the weapon. I commanded again, moving closer. Karen finally let the gun fall from her hand. It hit the concrete patio with a metallic clatter that seemed to echo forever. I'm a federal agent, I said, kicking the gun away while keeping my eyes on Karen. You're under arrest. Federal agent? Karen's voice was barely a whisper. But you're just the neighbor? I'm also a father, I said, my voice cold as ice. And you just shot my daughter's husband. The color drained from Karen's face as the full weight of what she had done hit her. Your daughter? Oh God, what have I done? You committed a federal hate crime, I said, reaching for my handcuffs. You shot an innocent man because of his race. In front of federal witnesses. With federal agents present. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but it felt like hours. I watched the paramedics work on Mike while Sarah held his hand, whispering words of love and encouragement. Is he going to be okay? She asked the paramedic, her voice breaking. We need to get him to the hospital immediately, the paramedic said. The bullet punctured his lung, but we can work with that. He's young and strong. As they loaded Mike into the ambulance, Sarah looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Dad, I'm so scared. I know, baby. I know. But Mike's a fighter. He's going to be okay. I hoped I was right. While Sarah rode in the ambulance with Mike, I stayed behind to secure the crime scene. Karen was sitting in the back of a police car, her hands cuffed behind her back, staring blankly ahead. Detective Martinez arrived within the hour. I had worked with him before on a joint federal-local task force, and I knew he was good at his job. Agent Coleman, he said, approaching me. I heard what happened. How's your son-in-law? In surgery, I said. The bullet punctured his lung, but they think he'll make it. Thank God. What can you tell me about the shooter? I gave him a detailed account of everything I had witnessed, including Karen's racist comments and her claim that Mike had somehow poisoned her roses. So this was about roses? Detective Martinez asked, incredulous. No, I said. This was about hate. The roses were just an excuse. We'll need to search her house, see if we can find any evidence of premeditation. Already got the warrant, I said, holding up my phone. Federal judge signed it 20 minutes ago. Sometimes it pays to be FBI, Martinez said with a grim smile. We walked over to Karen's house, a pristine two-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her house was directly across from Mike and Sarah's, meaning she had watched them every day, letting her hate build. The roses, I said, pointing to the side of her house. Detective Martinez whistled low. Those are definitely dead. An entire bed of roses along Karen's fence line had withered and died, their brown, curled petals littering the ground. But look at this, I said, kneeling down near the fence. The soil is bone dry. These roses died from lack of water, not from pesticide. So Mike was telling the truth. Of course he was. But Karen needed an excuse to justify her hate. We searched Karen's house thoroughly. What we found painted a disturbing picture of a woman who had been consumed by racism and paranoia. In her home office, we discovered a computer filled with white supremacist websites, racist forums, and conspiracy theories. There were printed articles about the Mexican invasion and protecting white neighborhoods. Jesus, Detective Martinez said, scrolling through her browser history. She's been planning this for months. Look at this, I said, pointing to a notebook on her desk. Karen had been keeping a detailed log of every time she saw Mike or Sarah, what they were wearing, who they talked to, when they left and returned home. This is stalking, Detective Martinez said. This goes way beyond a neighborhood dispute. It gets worse, I said, opening another folder. Inside were printed photos of Mike and Sarah taken with a telephoto lens. Photos of them in their yard, getting their mail, loading groceries into their car. She's been watching them obsessively, Detective Martinez said. This is premeditated. Federal hate crime, stalking, attempted murder, I said. Karen's going away for a very long time. But as we continued searching, I found something that made my blood run cold. In Karen's bedroom closet, hidden behind a stack of boxes, was a detailed map of the neighborhood. Red X's marked the homes of every non-white family in the area. Mike and Sarah's house had a big red circle around it with the words, "First Target," written in angry red ink. She was planning to kill them all, I said quietly. Detective Martinez stared at the map. This is terrorism. Yes, it is. And I'm going to make sure she pays for every single charge. I arrived at the hospital just as Mike was getting out of surgery. Sarah was pacing the waiting room, her yellow sundress now stained with blood, her face streaked with tears. Dad. She ran to me and I held her tight as she sobbed against my chest. How is he? I asked. The doctor says he's stable. The bullet missed his heart by 2 inches. 2 inches, Dad. If Karen had aimed just a little to the left. But she didn't, I said firmly. Mike's going to be okay. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe someone tried to kill my husband because of the color of his skin. I know, baby. I know. What kind of person does that? What kind of person shoots an innocent man over flowers? A sick person, I said. Someone consumed by hate. I want her to pay, Dad. I want her to pay for what she did to Mike, to us, to our future. She will, I promised. I'm going to make sure of it. The doctor came out a few hours later with good news. Mike was stable and awake and we could see him. Mike looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, tubes and wires running from his body to various machines. But his eyes were clear and he managed a weak smile when he saw Sarah. Hey beautiful, he whispered. Hey yourself, Sarah said, taking his hand. You scared me. Sorry about that. Is the barbecue over? Despite everything, Sarah laughed. I think we can safely say the party's over. Good. I hate hosting parties. I watched my daughter and son-in-law together, their love so evident even in this horrible moment, and I felt my resolve harden. Karen had tried to destroy this. She had tried to kill this good man simply because of his heritage. She had terrorized my family. She was going to pay. Over the next few days, as Mike recovered in the hospital, I dug deeper into Karen's background. What I found explained everything and made it so much worse. Karen Whitmore hadn't always been a racist. In fact, 10 years ago, she had been married to a man named David Rodriguez, Mike's cousin. David had left Karen after discovering she was having an affair with her boss. The divorce had been messy and public, with Karen losing the house they had shared and most of her savings. She had blamed David for ruining her life, and had gradually developed a hatred for anything and anyone that reminded her of him. When Mike and Sarah had moved into the neighborhood, Karen had recognized the name Rodriguez immediately. She had become obsessed with the idea that Mike was somehow connected to her ex-husband, that he was part of some elaborate plot to torment her. She's been living in a fantasy world, I told Detective Martinez. A world where every Hispanic person is somehow connected to her ex-husband, where they're all working together to destroy her life. Mental illness doesn't excuse attempted murder, Detective Martinez said. No, it doesn't. But it explains how someone can fall so far down the rabbit hole of hate. I had also discovered that Karen had been fired from her job at the bank 6 months ago for making racist comments to customers. She had been struggling financially, which had only increased her paranoia and anger. She was looking for someone to blame, I said. And Mike and Sarah were convenient targets. Well, now she's going to have plenty of time to think about her choices, Detective Martinez said. As an FBI agent, I knew I had to recuse myself from the official investigation to avoid any conflicts of interest. But I also knew exactly how to build a case that would ensure Karen received the maximum sentence possible. The evidence was overwhelming. The racist comments, witnessed by multiple people and recorded on my phone. The premeditated stalking, documented in her journals and photos. The hate crime enhancement, supported by her computer history and the map we found in her closet. But I wanted more. I wanted to make sure Karen understood the full weight of what she had done. I reached out to my contacts in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. This wasn't just a local crime, it was a federal hate crime that fell under their jurisdiction. Agent Coleman, said Deputy Attorney General Williams when I called. I heard about what happened. How's your son-in-law? He's going to recover, I said. But I want to make sure this never happens again. What do you need? I want this case to send a message. I want every racist Karen in America to know that this behavior has consequences. Consider it done. Within 48 hours, Karen was facing federal charges that could put her in prison for the rest of her life. Attempted murder, hate crime, stalking, terrorism, and conspiracy to commit additional hate crimes based on the map we found in her closet. The media attention was immediate and intense. The story of the HOA president who shot her neighbor in a racist rage, not knowing his father-in-law was an FBI agent, went viral within hours. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that she was mentally ill, that she hadn't intended to kill Mike, that it was all a misunderstanding about roses. But the evidence was too strong. The jury saw the racist websites, the stalking photos, the target map. They heard the recordings of her racist comments. They saw Mike in his hospital bed, still recovering from his wounds. It took them less than 2 hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. The day of Karen's sentencing was gray and cold, matching the somber mood in the courtroom. Mike was there, still walking slowly but determined to face his attacker. Sarah sat beside him, her hand in his, both of them ready to see justice done. I watched from the gallery as Karen was led into the courtroom in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her crimes. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, the defendant didn't just shoot an innocent man. She terrorized an entire family. She planned to commit additional acts of violence against other families in her neighborhood. She represents the worst of what hate can do to a person. Karen's lawyer made a half-hearted attempt to argue for mercy, but the judge cut him off. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge said, looking directly at Karen. You have been convicted of one of the most serious hate crimes I have ever seen in my courtroom. You didn't just shoot Mr. Rodriguez. You tried to kill him because of his race. You stalked him and his wife. You planned to target other families. You turned a quiet neighborhood into a place of fear. Karen stood silently, her head bowed. The court sentences you to 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. You will also pay restitution for Mr. Rodriguez's medical expenses and emotional damages. And you will be prohibited from ever living in a homeowners association community again. 30 years. Karen would be in her 80s before she ever breathed free air again. As the bailiff led her away, Karen looked back at Mike and Sarah one last time. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, no hate. Just the hollow emptiness of a woman who had destroyed her own life with racism and paranoia. It's over, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. It's finally over. Mike squeezed her hand. No, it's not over. It's just beginning. Mike was right. The end of Karen's trial wasn't the end of our story, it was the beginning of our healing. The neighborhood rallied around Mike and Sarah in ways I hadn't expected. The same neighbors who had backed away during Karen's racist tirade now brought meals, helped with yard work, and offered their support. Mrs. Chin, the elderly woman who lived next door to Karen's now empty house, brought over homemade soup and apologized for not speaking up sooner. I heard her making those awful comments, she said, tears in her eyes. I should have said something. I should have warned you. It's not your fault, Sarah said gently. Karen was responsible for her own actions. But I could have done something. I could have helped prevent this. You're helping now, Mike said. That's what matters. The Rodriguez family organized a neighborhood unity barbecue a month after the shooting. It was held in the same yard where Karen had shot Mike, but this time it was filled with love and laughter instead of hate. People of all backgrounds came together to support Mike and Sarah. There were white families, Hispanic families, Asian families, black families, all united in their rejection of Karen's hatred. This is what America should look like, Mike said, watching children of all colors playing together in the yard. This is what Karen was trying to destroy. The case had consequences beyond just Karen's sentencing. The HOA was investigated and found to have a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Several other residents came forward with stories of racist treatment they had received from Karen and other board members. The entire HOA board was forced to resign, and new leadership was elected with a commitment to inclusion and equal treatment for all residents. Karen's house was sold to pay for her legal fees and Mike's medical expenses. A young black couple bought it and moved in with their 2 small children. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen's house was now home to exactly the kind of family she had tried to keep out of the neighborhood. I think Karen would hate knowing that, Sarah said with a satisfied smile. Good, I said. Let her hate it from her prison cell. The case also led to changes in how hate crimes are prosecuted. The Justice Department used our case as a model for how to build comprehensive federal hate crime charges, and Karen's 30-year sentence became a precedent for other similar cases. You changed the law, Deputy Attorney General Williams told me. Every future case like this will be stronger because of what you did. What we did, I corrected. Mike and Sarah are the ones who had the courage to see it through. A year after the shooting, life had found a new rhythm. Mike had fully recovered physically, though he still had nightmares sometimes. Sarah had gone back to work at the hospital, but she had also started volunteering with a local anti-hate organization. I want to make sure this never happens to another family, she explained. Mike had returned to teaching, but he also spoke at schools and community events about the dangers of racism and the importance of standing up to hate. Karen thought she could terrorize us into leaving, he said during one of his speeches. But we're not going anywhere. This is our home and we're going to make it better. I had taken early retirement from the FBI to spend more time with my family. After nearly losing Mike, I realized how precious these moments were. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked me one evening as we sat on her patio watching the sunset. Taking early retirement, I mean? Not for a second, I said. I spent 25 years catching bad guys. Now I get to spend my time with the people I love. Even after everything that happened? Especially after everything that happened. Karen tried to destroy our family, but instead she made us stronger. Mike came out of the house carrying a tray of lemonade. His movements were still a little careful. The bullet had done some nerve damage that would probably never fully heal, but he was alive and happy, and that was what mattered. What are you two talking about? He asked, setting down the tray. Just how lucky we are, Sarah said, taking his hand. Lucky? Mike raised an eyebrow. I got shot by a racist neighbor. That doesn't seem very lucky. But you survived, I said. And Karen is spending the rest of her life in prison. And our neighborhood is stronger than ever. And we're all still here together. Mike considered this. You know what? You're right. We are lucky. As the sun set over Oakwood Hills, I thought about how different things could have been. If Karen had aimed 2 inches to the left, Mike would be dead. If I hadn't been home that night, Karen might have gotten away with it. If the neighbors hadn't rallied around us, we might have been forced to leave. But none of that had happened. Instead, love had triumphed over hate. Justice had prevailed over racism. And a family had grown stronger in the face of tragedy. 2 years after the shooting, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Karen, writing from federal prison. Agent Coleman, it began. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand if you throw this letter away without reading it. But I need to try to explain, not to excuse what I did, but to help you understand how I became the person who could do such a terrible thing. I was not always filled with hate. There was a time when I was married to David Rodriguez and I loved him. I loved his family, his culture, his language. I was learning Spanish. I was planning to have children who would be part of both our worlds. When David left me, I was devastated. But instead of dealing with that pain in a healthy way, I let it poison me. I let it turn into hate for everything and everyone who reminded me of him. I spent years feeding that hate, consuming racist propaganda, convincing myself that I was the victim. When Mike and Sarah moved in, I saw David in Mike's face. I saw the life I had lost, the happiness I had thrown away. Instead of facing my own failures, I blamed Mike for existing. I blamed Sarah for loving him. I blamed you for supporting them. I know that none of this excuses what I did. I know that I nearly killed an innocent man because of my own twisted thinking. I know that I terrorized your family and tried to destroy your daughter's happiness. I will spend the rest of my life in prison, and I deserve every day of it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. I understand that the hate I felt was really hate for myself, for the choices I made, for the person I became. I hope Mike has recovered fully. I hope Sarah has found peace. I hope you can all forgive me someday, not because I deserve it, but because forgiveness might help you heal. I will never hurt anyone again. I will spend my remaining years trying to figure out how to live with what I've done. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore. I read the letter twice, then set it aside. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to throw it away without giving it another thought. But another part of me recognized something I had rarely seen in my years as an FBI agent. Genuine remorse. I showed the letter to Mike and Sarah. They read it in silence, their faces unreadable. What do you think? I asked. I think she's finally telling the truth, Sarah said quietly. For the first time since this all started, she's telling the truth. Does that change anything? Mike asked. It doesn't change what she did, I said. But it might change how we move forward. Are you going to write back? Sarah asked. I thought about it for a long time. I don't know. Maybe. Someday. I think Mom would have written back, Sarah said. She always believed in second chances. Your mother was a better person than I am, I said. No, Mike said. She was just a person who understood that hate only breeds more hate. That the only way to break the cycle is with something stronger. Like what? Like love. Like forgiveness. Like the courage to be better than the people who hurt us. I looked at my son-in-law, this good man who had nearly died because of someone else's hatred, and I realized he was right. Karen had spent years letting hate consume her life. I didn't want to spend my remaining years letting hate consume mine. I'll think about it, I said. 6 months later, I did write back to Karen. It wasn't a long letter, but it was honest. Karen, I wrote. I received your letter, and I believe you when you say you understand what you did. I believe you when you say you're sorry. But understanding and remorse don't undo the damage you caused. Mike still has nightmares. Sarah still jumps every time she hears a car backfire. I still check the locks on my doors twice every night. You didn't just shoot a man, you shot holes in all of our sense of safety and security. But I'm not writing to make you feel worse. I'm writing because my son-in-law is a better person than I am, and he reminded me that hate only breeds more hate. I don't want to spend my remaining years carrying your poison in my heart. I don't forgive you, I'm not there yet, and I may never be. But I'm not going to let what you did turn me into someone filled with hate. I'm going to focus on my family, on love, on building the kind of world where people like you can't succeed. I hope you spend your remaining years trying to figure out how to prevent other people from making the same mistakes you made. I hope you find some way to make amends even from prison. But mostly, I hope you understand that you failed. You tried to destroy my family with hate, and instead you made us stronger. You tried to tear apart our neighborhood, and instead you brought us together. You tried to spread fear and division, and instead you inspired love and unity. That's your legacy, Karen. Not the hate you tried to spread, but the love you accidentally created in response to it. Agent Coleman. I never heard back from Karen, and I didn't expect to. But writing that letter helped me let go of the last of my anger. It helped me focus on what mattered. My family, my community, and the future we were building together. 5 years after the shooting, Mike and Sarah had their first child, a beautiful baby girl they named Hope. As I held my granddaughter in my arms, I thought about the world she would grow up in. It wouldn't be a perfect world. There would still be people like Karen, people consumed by hate and fear. But it would also be a world where love triumphs over hate, where justice prevails over racism, where families like ours stand together against those who would divide us. She's beautiful, I said, looking down at Hope's tiny face. She's perfect, Sarah said, beaming with pride. She's going to change the world, Mike added. I believed him. This little girl, born from the love between a Mexican-American teacher and a white nurse, growing up in a neighborhood that had chosen unity over division, raised by a family that had faced hate with courage, she was going to make the world a better place. Tell me the story again, Grandpa, she would probably ask me someday. Tell me about the mean lady who tried to hurt Daddy. And I would tell her. I would tell her about Karen, about hate, about the importance of standing up to bullies. But I would also tell her about love, about forgiveness, about the strength that comes from family and community. I would tell her that her father was a hero not because he got shot, but because he chose to respond to hate with love. I would tell her that her mother was a hero, not because she stood by her husband, but because she chose to use her experience to help others. I would tell her that sometimes bad things happen to good people, but that doesn't mean we give up. It means we fight harder, love deeper, and stand stronger together. And I would tell her that she was born from love, raised in love, and destined to spread love wherever she goes. That's the story I want to tell. Not the story of Karen's hate, but the story of our love. Not the story of one woman's fall into darkness, but the story of one family's rise into light. Because in the end, that's what matters. Not the hate that tried to destroy us, but the love that made us stronger. Hope gurgled in my arms, and I smiled down at her. She was our future, our hope, our proof that love always wins in the end. Karen had tried to write our story with bullets and hate. But we had rewritten it with love and courage and the unbreakable bonds of family. And that's a story worth telling.